Hello, Knights of the Rolled Table. What you're about to listen to is a bonus episode in which we discuss a supplement to D&D called Ancestry and Culture, an alternative to race in 5e. It's from Arcanist Press. In this episode, we're going to talk about race as it exists in the Dungeons and Dragons universe and how that relates to problems of race in our own world. And I just thought it would be important to open up by saying, like, by no means are we holding ourselves up to be, paragons of virtue, experts of social justice that are able to talk about these things in the perfect, well thought out way that you might want to. And I think that's important to share, because if everyone waits until you are a fully educated, well-spoken expert on a loaded topic that's difficult and important, well, that's a recipe to just never discuss those things. And if we never discuss those things in the kind of like awkward, difficult ways we might stumble over when we're talking about a sensitive topic, then that's exactly the recipe to allow things to be stuck where they are, to not advance, to not move forward, to not learn. And hopefully you'd agree with all of us that this is definitely a topic where we want to learn, we want to advance, we want to get better. We also want to have fun, and this is an entertaining, fun episode of us hanging out and talking and playing with this really fun supplement that really does nothing but add fun options to the game. So we encourage you all to check it out and listen to this, and we hope you enjoy. We'd love to hear your feedback about it. Hello, Knights of the Rolled Table, and welcome to a very special episode, a bonus episode of Knights of the Rolled Table. We're going to be talking about a supplement we're going to incorporate into our game, our character, and it's called Ancestry and Culture, an alternative to race in 5e. And we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about why we think that's important and what it is, and having a little fun creating a character that uses some of the options that this supplement gives us to work with. So here with me to discuss today, we have Carlos and Jen and Chris and Jeff. How's everybody doing?
Well, I'm doing super
good. I mean, I think it's
really
it's
good.
been
Like it's pretty good.
I think it's
hanging in
awesome.
there. Good.
Can we do another take where we all talk at the same time?
Yes, please.
Joining me, I have Carlos, we have Jen, we have Chris, we have Jeff. How's everybody doing?
Zach.
A
little
strange
in the world right now,
but we're
good.
We're good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Okay, all right. This is good
Zach
to know. Quick check-in, very efficient. So we are recording for the first time in a different format. We're just like recording a Zoom meeting. So I don't know how the audio quality is turning out, but we can see each other.
Your faces look amazing, and I'm saying that out loud so that someone listening to this who has no idea what your faces look like will know that somewhere your faces look great.
You're creating
Check
the
out
visual
the
picture.
Instagram where I will take a picture and post it.
Well, anyway, let's talk about this thing. So Ancestry and Culture, an alternative to race in 5e. So we'll talk a little bit about why this is a good thing to consider, know about, think about. And this is one supplement that is available on the DMs Guild. There's a couple of others that do a similar thing. There's another one called An Elf and an Orc Had a Little Baby, Parentage and Upbringing in D&D. And it basically kind of breaks things down similar to Ancestry and Culture, except it calls it Parenting and Upbringing. And basically what this does is it replaces the concept of race in the game with two things: ancestry, which is things that you inherit from your parents, and culture, which is things that you absorb from where you grew up and the culture that you grew up in. And there's a lot of good reasons to do that. Besides some important social justice kind of like advancement of society and culture reasons, it's also, the supplement gives a lot of just fun options that really should. It's silly that they haven't existed in D&D. Specifically, like, there's half elves and there's half orcs, and that's like apparently the only two things that you can be half of for some reasons. Halflings aren't even a half of something. They're just short. And so this basically gives you options to have your character be, to have two different parents from any sort of culture or any sort of ancestry. And then in addition to an ancestry from two different parents, your character could possibly grow up in a different culture than either of those parents and gain abilities related to that culture, which just like vastly expands the character creation options. And we will towards the end of this episode have Jen has actually not looked through this supplement, and so
I did no homework.
Yeah, so she's going to be our audience perspective person here. So we're going to kind of explain it to her and then have her create a character based on how this
Your
thing works.
resident clueless player.
Yeah. Any opening thoughts anybody wants to share about?
Well, I think the timing of it is super relevant. I mean, obviously they were working on this before everything happened with Black Lives Matter and everything in this year.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there was a call from the community within role-playing games in general where there needed to be a clearer, at least from a role-playing standpoint and from a rules standpoint, like how would you make that work? How would you make it fair? People have meshed cultures together. I did that with Gravely,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of worked something out, you and I, but that was before this came out, so this would have helped a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I find kind of interesting and cool about this particular supplement is it's the way it addresses the issue is basically exactly what we homebrewed with Gravely, with just Chris and I talking about his idea that he wanted to be part halfling and part half orc.
Yeah, I mean,
Welcome
there's
to my
a section at the very beginning that goes like, why replace race with ancestry and culture, right?
Mhm.
I
Plenty
did
of-
skim that like
Yeah,
5 minutes ago.
I'm sure plenty of people don't need much of an explanation, but there's also plenty of people that kind of need a breakdown of like, what exactly is problematic about the way things currently are. A lot of where these kind of ideas of D&D races, comes from, it clearly has its root in like Tolkien. That's quickly approaching being like 100 years ago that it was like conceived as a way of like organizing a fantasy world and presenting things and having its roots in that, the system that D&D itself being almost like 40, 50 years old at this point, having things that can update that, being able to kind of like switch things up within that system now. So that people don't necessarily have to homebrew. I kind of think of it as almost like if you do PC gaming, it's kind of like a mod, like installing a mod into D&D. So instead of you having to figure out, well, how can I turn everything in Dark Souls into hot dogs? Like someone creates that for you and you just like install it and it's done. And this is kind of like reskinning Dark Souls with hot dogs, I think was my point. Just as important, just as relevant to our current day in 2020. But
More
yeah,
hot dogs.
more hot dogs, I say. But yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily perfect. It's a very complicated subject. But I think sort of like moving in the direction that this moves in is definitely a positive. And just from a sort of like mechanical perspective, actually brings up a lot of fun stuff that you can do by essentially like mixing and matching stuff together.
So there's kind of two big reasons for like why to address this issue. One is like the diversity of like having a lot more fun character options, but also like race as a concept is something that our culture is built on like handling race very, very badly. We live in a country here in the United States built on the foundation of slavery, and when we talk about race, we tend to like get really awkward and bad and problematic things come up. And that definitely trickles down into the way that it's handled in D&D. So I'm going to read, the supplement does a really nice job in just like a page or two of kind of like capturing that issue and explaining it. And it even has some links. So I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs. Scientists and philosophers who study race reject the concept of race as a biological fact that discretely individuates groups of people. Race is not a biological reality. Rather, it is a social concept constructed and employed differently at different times in history and in different places in the world. It is not like eye color, but like citizenship, something that is based in social relations and concepts, not biology. In other words, the concept of race, as it has been used from at least the Enlightenment forward to the 20th century, is frankly bankrupt. This is not to say there's no such thing as ancestry, heritage, and genetic difference, of course. Indeed, our genetics are real, but they are a function of our individual ancestry, not our race. What folks call racial differences simply do not map cleanly onto anything in our biology as simplistic as the concept of race. What's more, that concept in the real world has been used to justify historic atrocities. Indeed, racists still use these bogus, faux scientific justifications to support their prejudice. Because these harmful concepts have no place in our world, they need not be in the stories we tell with our friends either.
Now, the essay has to be 3 pages, double spaced, and I want to hear your thoughts.
Response, compare and contrast. Yeah, I mean, so the notion of, it's kind of a startling notion for a lot of people that like race is really not like a biological thing. The way we categorize race is not something you can like go into people's DNA and see, like eye color. Or
but
height
Zach,
or whatever.
23andMe says that I am obviously.
That's Ancestry, Jen. That's what it will tell you. It'll tell you where your people are from, but it does not map onto race, which is something, you know, if that's an interesting concept to you, you can get into that and research in general. But basically the idea of race, like basically has been used to primarily justify like the way we conceptualize race basically like pops up in writing around the time Europeans who were supposed to be Christian were kidnapping people from Africa and then selling them to colonizers in America. And they had to come up with a way to kind of justify why that was okay for Christian people to do. And they started talking about this notion of like, well, this race is inferior. And that's the same narrative that gets used to justify genocides. It gets used to justify wars with other people. It just gets used in not great ways. And that takes us.
The supplement also does a good job of pointing out that like that's also done in the case of like orcs in the fantasy setting of like, these are basically people, but it's okay to kill these people that essentially look or essentially function as humans, have the same thought processes as humans, but like they're bad, so therefore like it's good. It's the good kind of genocide.
Yeah, that's exactly where it plays into why we're talking about this in a D&D game. It's basically kind of like lazy story writing that comes up all the time of saying like, I don't want to kind of go into justifying why it's okay for my characters to fight these people. So you know what? Just all these people are bad. Here's some goblins, and you know that goblins are evil no matter what. So go ahead and slaughter them. That's basically the same thing that has been used in real history, and that's why it's not a great thing to be. Like I said, kind of lazy storytelling, and also not a thing you want to be reflecting in the real world.
So the next section on page 5 of the supplement, it says race matters in fantasy, and it brings up a good point about like, they're not really races, they're species. And why wouldn't in the player's handbook or, you know, the Pathfinder core rule book, like why wouldn't they say, here are the species that you choose from?
Well, I think that's the real thing, because like in this universe where apparently they can like mate and you can have half elves and half orcs and things, like that's like that's like the scientific definition of not a species. Like, oh, they have like, they're compatible and they can have babies, so really they're all one species. Jeff was talking earlier about the notion of like D&D, let's call it D&DNA. We don't really need to get into the genetics of all of this. But you know, we want to just embrace the fun.
What I like about some of the supplements, especially in the second one where it gets into some weird creatures and how you can have a character that has been descended from oozes or Tarask or whatever, like, and they're like, wait a second, how does a Tarask mate with an elf? Or like, that's, they give a little suggestion, which I thought is kind of cool for each one. Like wizards were experimenting with oozes. I was reading the ooze one. I was like, how does that work? And they said like that they were cursed and the wizards became these ooze creatures. And then their descendants throughout time now have these like humanoid ooze features, which I was like, okay.
In a game that has magic spells and people can conjure storms and there's, you know, walking owl creatures and gods and giants, like the notion of like, well, I don't know how biologically the genetics of this and this could work is like, it's dumb. It's a magical world and like, you know, it's just never ever going to be that logic based, which is why I think it's a more important notion to be embracing. I mean, what's really the important thing to take into account is not the fantasy logic of our magical universe. It's being inclusive with the people around your table. And, you know, 4 white men sitting around a table coming up with like what their universe is going to be is very likely to like channel the same like culture of white supremacy that works real well for me as a straight white male. But you know, somebody else who's being included at your table who is not a straight white male might really feel a lot louder than I might not even notice something that person is recognizing, like, oh, this narrative that I'm being asked to participate in is basically the one that was used to like assault all my ancestors, and I'm not really having as much fun in this game as these people are. So like, you know, recognizing that and being inclusive really about those real world concepts is really, really important, assuming you have your part of your culture of your table is to be inclusive and welcome as many people as possible. So what does it do? How does it work? So basically, I think what they really went out of their way to do in this supplement is, and part of why I like it, is if you just want to play from the player's handbook, and you want to play an elf that had 2 elf parents and grew up in an elf society, you don't have to change anything. You don't have to change anything about your character. So this really just adds options. It adds more ideas, creates a more diverse world, and gives you options to explore of like, oh, my elf had elf parents, but then he grew up with dwarves, and that's where he learned blacksmithing or whatever.
But if you did want to play just elf, you know, you could say, instead of the elf racial trait, you would say elf ancestral trait, and that would be things like the age, size, speed, dark vision, you know, like stuff like that. And then you would have elf cultural traits, which is like what you gathered from being raised as an elf, and certain tendencies and certain languages and abilities and things like that being raised by elves.
Yeah.
Right?
So that is the one thing that you would change, is basically just switch out the word race for
terminology,
ancestry and or culture, depending on what it was.
Yeah.
So ancestry being things that are like reasonably you would inherit from your parents, eye color, height, like the age range, things like that. And culture is things that you would more absorb, like skills and ideas that you would absorb from your culture growing up.
So Zach,
yes,
if we were to create Gravely using this supplement, it would be something like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be something like he would have orcish ancestral traits, but be raised with halfling cultural traits.
Yeah,
it
well,
would actually be orcish and halfling ancestral traits, and then raised as a halfling.
Because he has a halfling parent and a orc parent, or a half orc parent. We didn't really clarify. So so you would mix and match the ancestry traits from halfling and half orc, and then because he grew up with halflings, right?
Yeah.
So then his cultural traits you would lean into halfling.
Okay.
And I think this particular supplement doesn't get into, like, you could get into kind of details of like, we're gonna like, you know, give like a point value to each ancestral trait so that you can try to do balance, and they don't really do too much in this supplement to do that. You can kind of mix and match and just decide and sort of balance out which is which. And so actually thinking back to when we did that with Gravely, I think one thing, just talking to Chris about what he wanted and what he envisioned and just trying to keep some balance, I remember specifically, I think of all the like half orc and halfling traits that are in there, I think the most powerful for me is the lucky trait of halfling. And so he was willing to give that up, because I think partially because like Gravely being a little bit inherently unlucky was sort of central to the character. And so if he was willing to dump out that really powerful trait, I was very, very open to like whatever you want to take from the orc side of things.
I think I kept halfling nimbleness, like where you can dodge between people that are bigger, and then from orcs I took like relentless endurance or something, which he's never used, but yeah, it seems like very similar to what we did with him.
Yeah. So there is one thing that is, I think, big in this kind of like cultural discussion is ability scores. Ability scores being attached to race is an easily problematic thing. It's called, a word to describe that is bioessentialism. And especially when you're tying things to like, oh, this race is very intelligent, whereas this race has lower intelligence, but they're good at strength. Like that ties really right into like the narrative that's been used in history to justify why these people should own these people, and et cetera, et cetera. So especially in, I think in Volo's guide, there's the so-called monstrous races. There's rules for like bugbear and goblin. And for those races specifically, some of the ability scores are negative. And that really, that's a big point for a lot of people looking at like, those are the exact races that like map easily onto like, oh, sure. Like not only do you in your game have like drow that are always evil and they happen to have dark skin, or orcs that are always evil and they're this like savage narrative, but also like some of these specific monstrous characters have negative traits. That's relatively problematic. And the way they address that in this supplement is tying ability scores not to the ancestry side but to the cultural side. And that's, you know, kind of on the notion that like, yeah, if your culture basically sends everybody to military school throughout their youth, it makes sense that they might have a little bit more strength and constitution on average. If your culture sends everybody to study in the library, they might be smarter. But there's also
both Spartans and Athenians
Yeah.
were Greek, right? Like
Very
it's
much.
just like 100% the culture was widely different.
But there's also kind of like a subset of like, if you want to just like throw out ability scores and just kind of like through your own narrative justify my character has +2 in this because my character has +2 intelligence because his dad was the bookkeeper, the scholar of the orc tribe, that's fine. There's an appendix and it basically says like, if you just want to take +2 in whatever you want, +1 in whatever you want, that's fine. And I like that. I kind of lean that way of like, it's all about like creating a character that like you can justify in your narrative, and this is how this character grew up, and I think that's all good. I would lean more that way. But I think the way they like, the reason they do it that way is again leaning back into, it's not forcing anybody to change anything. It's only this whole supplement is only adding options to what you can do.
To me, I think what this is like most powerful in doing is like increasing the longevity of how long you want to spend in this world. Because it is true, like I think you kind of reach, at least for me in my journey of like enjoying fantasy, is like you reach a certain point where you begin to kind of learn about, oh wait, these are the people who made up these things, and like here's why they're like actually super problematic. And then once you kind of get that door open, it's like, oh yeah, this is all trash. This is all horrible. Like assumptions built on top of assumptions and built on like this horrible thing. It's like, well, I don't really want to. It's hard to stay engaged in a world that once you see it so surface level and so devoid of like real personality and character that like, oh yeah, it gets harder to like be really involved in it for a long time. And obviously for us having to do a podcast with the same people over a long period of time with these stories like this
terrible.
It's just I again want to emphasize this is not a good idea. I am against the podcast. I am against this idea. I've been against it from the start, and I've been on record for being against this from the start.
Noted.
And as the DM for season 4, my intent is to end it all. So stay tuned.
World-ending events.
Episode 1, meteor hits you. Everybody dies. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
End of podcast. Anyway, I think it just increases the longevity of like curiosity and building of this world, because then it's like, oh yes, these are rich. These are like actual. This is like a real world that exists. And you can imagine it a little more complexly, you know, as imagining the real world very complexly and the very complex ways that real people in this real world interact with each other, having the same opportunity to do that with a set of rules in D&D is also adds to the complexity of it. And I think allows it to really have longevity.
Yeah, I mean, an interesting angle on a role-playing game as opposed to like a book or a movie that you like reread and realize is kind of dated. Like reading The Hobbit and realize there's not a single female character in all of The Hobbit, which just blows my mind.
Yikes.
Role-playing games, like you're making up your own world, which means one, like if there's stuff you don't like in the game, just throw it out and do something else. But also like in creating your own world, your own blind spots, your own biases, your own prejudices are bound to like populate your world too. So it's important, especially if you want to be inclusive to people you're playing with, to really like challenge that and be intentional.
It's interesting that like essentially in D&D there's like a spectrum where it's sort of like on one end of the spectrum is the storytelling and on the other end of the spectrum is the systems.
Mhm.
And you know, D&D is a board game more so than a video game, right? And video games have very rigid systems, right? You can't do anything in the game that the game's not programmed to accept as input or as interaction, like outside of like glitches or bugs or whatever, right? But there's sort of like a stringent scaffolding and construction to everything. And in D&D, plenty of people can lean in that direction. You can sort of decide to be very stringent with your systems and how the rules work. The rules definitely make that possible to do. But plenty of people like to lean further into the storytelling aspect and sort of either bend, ignore, or just completely come up with their own rules as they go along.
Jeff.
And, like, construct
Sorry.
their own thing.
Sorry. What happened?
And so I feel like this is a good solution for people on either end of the spectrum, right? Where sort of sometimes the difficulty when you're very storytelling focused is to prevent things from becoming Calvin ball, you know, just complete chaos, and anyone can come up with like any sort of bending of the rule or new thing at a moment's notice, and you just kind of like roll with it. I'm sure
the
some
formula
people
for customization.
Right. And I'm sure plenty of people might enjoy that chaos, but a lot of people kind of like want at least some semblance of order, even if you're leaning very much story focused. Whereas like people who are very like systems focused can use this as like the framework that again slots into the system that already exists without breaking it, but just adding sort of like additional options and a different way to like think and approach it. And you don't have to like sit by yourself in the basement for hours and hours coming up with how exactly you're going to tweak the systems already like in there to make it happen.
Yeah, well said.
And then we should say mechanically, so if you've downloaded the Ancestry and Culture supplement and you're kind of following along, the first 5 or 6 pages kind of just talks about what it's about. And then it talks about some of the main ancestries from the player's handbook. And then around page 26, and this was a little hard for me to find at first, but because it's just immediately after Tiefling, it says mix ancestry and diverse culture. So that kind of goes into how to, if you want to pick from more than one ancestry and background, like how to do it for each kind of stat, like age, size, different things, and like how to balance it out. So the mechanics are not just at the beginning, they're kind of throughout this. But that little middle section around page 26, 27 explains how you can do that with ability scores and things like that for mixing, if you want to mix.
Yeah, the supplement that you can download from DM's Guild, I think, is like $10. You get a PDF, and it actually also includes 2 like modules, like play adventures that you can play that kind of lean into the ancestries and culture concept.
Just have everybody in your group, you know, pitch in $2 or whatever,
yeah.
and go for it. You know, I mean, this is something that's good for everybody involved.
It's from a company called Arcanist Press, who are very accessible. I've chatted with the guy, the main like author, on Twitter about it. And then they have some other supplements to add on to it. And I bought one of those called More Ancestries and Cultures. There's 2 of these. There's like, I forget what the other one is called, but it's the same thing, which is just a bunch of pretty weird out there ancestries and cultures to add to your game. So I specifically bought this one, More Ancestries and Cultures, because I think the other one is Custom Ancestries and Culture. But this one is specific to characters that might be from like other planes. And I figured since our main kind of our podcast narrative involved people coming over from other planes, that might have some interesting ideas. So my character, a character that I'm playing in season 4 coming up, is actually a Phoenix born. And that's one of the
Spoilers.
cultures. I know. Tune in. That's one of the, it's more of a teaser. So Phoenix born, and the notion is that he was one of Charkandris's troops, soldiers, and from Sindel's culture, and he basically got left in our world, and he's trolling around looking for something to do. And so
Yeah, and I'm looking at this list, and there's stuff like, Blink Dog, Naga, Owlbear, Scorpion, Sphinxes, Tarrasque, Unicorn. And not necessarily saying that my father was a Blink Dog and my mother was a halfling or whatever. Some sort of aspect is pulled from that. And, however it happened, genetics or magic or whatever, but that's kind of cool.
Science.
To think like you can have a humanoid that has this Blink Dog kind of aspect or Ettins or gargoyles, but it's in a playable character. And that just opens up a whole other role play possibilities.
yeah, the main supplement has all of the characters that are in all of the ancestries and cultures of the races that are in the player's handbook, and the other supplements have these other things. So we're going to look at this second supplement, more ancestries and culture. So we're going to have Jen make a character using kind of the rules here, and we're going to randomly select one of the ancestries and cultures for each of us, me, Chris, Carlos, and Jeff, and each of us is going to read over that real quick and kind of pitch to Jen why she might want to incorporate some parts about this.
I told you what I want, Zach. I want this done in the style of The Bachelorette.
Yes.
You each can make your case to me, and then the next one has to say, "Excuse me, can I cut in?" And then you can make your case to me. Excuse me, I have to go change into my cocktail attire.
And then three of us get roses and one of us go home.
So
Because we're
myself,
being super
Carlos, and Jeff
progressive
are
today.
pitching, and Zach is the host.
No, I'm pitching too, because she can pick up to 3. She can have 2 parents and a culture. You could actually mix and match culture too, but we're all going to do it. So
you have to trust in the process, Chris.
Yeah.
That's part of this.
I just didn't know what the process was.
So we're going to do it randomly. I'm going to roll a d20 and I'm going to count down from there. I rolled a 3. So first person is I'm going to assign it. Chris, you are going to sell her on the concept of an aster. So I'm going to roll another
Esther,
d20.
I hardly even knew her.
Count down from there. I rolled a 10. We're going to skip over the Hereborn, Blink Dog, Bullet Folk, Centaur, Cephalid, the Combined, Davin, Jin Blessed, Drider, and Earthborn. Carlos, you're going to pitch Jen on the concept of the Earthborn. Now we're going to go for Jeff. Here we go. I rolled another 10, so I'm going to count down 10 from Earthborn. We're going to skip over Afridi Touched, Fey and Shadow Elves, Aranyesi, Etten Folk, Flesh Construct, Gargoyle, Glabrazins, Harpies, Hobgoblins, Kraken Folk, and it's Kraken Folk. All right, Jeff, you are assigned to Kraken Folk. You're going to pitch her on the wonder and beauty of the Kraken Folk, and now we'll do mine. Oh, I rolled a 2. So we're going to skip over Leonine, and I'm going to be a Lashan. We'll probably pause briefly while we study up on these.
I'm just so excited to meet all of these ancestries and cultures that have come here for me. I mean, really, I know it sounds crazy, but I think here I can really find love. And when that connection happens, it's real. And I'm here for all the right reasons, and I hope that these ancestries and cultures are here for the right reasons too.
I need to watch more Bachelor so I could be funny about the host.
I mean, I legit could go put on an evening gown right now because I haven't gotten an excuse to wear a pretty dress in a long time, you guys.
Hey, me neither.
You should, and then we'll take a screen cap.
I mean, I could. How long do you guys need?
5 minutes.
All right, I'll be right back.
So Jen has actually changed into an evening dress and earrings to fully like lean into the Bachelor angle.
I'm having my moment, Zach.
So Jen, while you were out, Chris's character was more or less like a Githyanki, which he has played before. So he wanted to change it up a little bit more. So we re-rolled. We hit the jackpot. He is a psilocybe. He's going to be pitching psilocybe, which is basically a mushroom person.
Okay.
So who would like to begin?
Bachelor number 1.
Oh, yeah, she calls on you.
I can start. Mine is very straightforward.
All right.
This is
Carlos, you're up.
nice.
Hi, Bachelorette. I'm what you might describe as an earthborn. Now, you might be thinking, "Oh, salt of the earth?" Nah, girl. We're more of a jinn descended, right? I'm talking genies. We can be a little cranky. We can be a little set in our ways, but I'll tell you, we're very sturdy people, and we believe strongly in tradition and magic, because that's what we're all about. Usually, we're very earthen tones in the hair and skin and eyes. We tend to mature around the same speed as humans, so you ain't like elves where you live forever, and that's depressing because everyone you know and love dies. Nah, we die at the same time as our loved ones. It's great.
Oh, that's so romantic.
Mm-hmm. So and you know what, if we're going to a candlelight dinner, don't even worry about it, because that dark vision, I can still see 60 feet away even in candlelight. Yep, turn off the candle, doesn't even matter. And you ever get worried of those Medusas, girl? Don't even worry about it, because you are unpetrifiable when you're with the Earthborn.
Wow, I love it when a culture and ancestry is strong like that.
Speaking of culture, you might be wondering, like, well, what are y'all about? How do you raise your kids? And caves. It's called caves and caverns. All right. And you might think, oh no, I don't want to be stuck in there. But you know what? Things move at a slower pace down there. It's very, very kind of pastoral, rural communities. And some of the young uns, they want things to change, but the true wise old Earthborn, no, like keeping things the same, maybe it's a little bit better. So we can be okay, we can be a little conservative, yeah, but let me tell you, your constitution score, woo, put 2 on that, baby. And your wisdom, put a little 1 right next to it. And if we're talking about elemental magic, if elemental magic's your thing, you're going to want to check out the Earthborn, because that's what we're doing. We got some cantrips. Throw that in there, 3rd level, 5th level. You ever heard of a spell called Grease? Because we got that. All right? We got Grease. And I'm sure you can think of a couple of ways we could
I mean, does it involve John Travolta, or?
You know what? Maybe. I'll ask around the cavern and see if John's around. And if you're wondering, hey, what's the language of love with y'all Earthborn? It's common in Tehran, baby.
Wow, you've given me a lot to think about, but I do hope that you'll accept this first impression rose, because...
Hey, sure. Us Earthborn are patient, so you take your time.
Why do Earthborn know grease?
What does grease do?
You like lay out a bunch of grease and people slip on it.
It's essentially lube.
I'm not Earthborn, and I'm pretty sure I could do that.
Well, you earned that first impression, Rose. Hey. For all the Bachelor Nation fans that are listening to our podcast, because I know there's an overlap, they will get the first impression. They'll get that reference.
Yep.
Thank you, Earthborn.
I don't know what happened to Jeff.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Good God. I think he might be getting a costume. Let's go in order of weirdness, because mine's not that weird. I don't want to follow up.
This is so nice that we finally get a time to get to know each other.
Oh, it's so great to talk to you finally. I've been looking forward to this ever. I want to tell you about myself and my people. I'm a LaShawn. You probably recognize that from my blue skin and antlers. I'm very tall, obviously, 7 to 8 feet in height. Weigh about 300 pounds, but it's all in height. And I'm all about the forest. We live to be old. I'm going to be around a long, long time, but you know what? I don't fully mature until I'm 50. So,
it's like a lot of men that I know.
Spend a lot of youth. Our people blessed with Fey ancestry. And we're also forest walkers. I have the magical ability to move through natural terrain more quietly than other creatures.
Ooh.
My steps make no sound in the forest, regardless of where we're moving across. And I have advantage on stealth checks that rely on moving silently. But you know what? Let me tell you about our LaShawn culture. It's all about the forest, baby. Old growth forests, wild, untamed woodland clearings. That's where we like to hang out. You might walk through one of those woodland clearings, not even realize you walked through our village. That's how seamless we are with the forest. We got +2 to wisdom, +1 to constitution. And let me tell you about forest affinity. Basically, I can talk to animals and stuff.
Wow, well, communication is really important.
Yeah, and even with woodland beasts, I can communicate with them through simple ideas. If they're smaller. Finally, let me tell you about the wild hunt. LaShawn communities protect and revere the forests in which they dwell, but we're not pacifists. We embrace both the nurturing growth of the wood, but also its more violent predatory aspects as well. To commemorate the fullness of the environment in which we live, our communities conduct great hunts on special days like solstices, equinoxes.
You're giving me so much information. It feels like you're reading from a book.
We got the solstice coming up, and it's going to be off the hook. As part of these rituals, our community members learn to participate in the hunt, so I'm proficient in survival and simple weapons.
Wow.
Look me up, the LaShawn.
LaShawn, wow. That you've definitely given me a lot to think about. Thank you.
I'm wondering,
LaShawn.
looking back at this, if we're 7 to 8 feet with or without the horns. It's all about the art. All right, Jeff, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready, Missy. Now come over and talk to the Kraken folk. Because I tell you, we're derived from the Kraken itself. Deep from the bowels of the ocean blue, we clawed our way out to the sea. And we look like half fish we do. We're walking the fish, people. You see these gills here? I can breathe underwater.
So just time out. So
underwater.
for our audio listeners, so we definitely might post this. Jeff has embraced the cosplay. He's wearing a hood. He's got an eye patch on, which consists of a sticky note he's taped over his eye with an eye patch drawn on it. And when he turns his head,
I
he's
made
also
use of the supplies around me.
he's also created sticky note gills on his neck. So he's really like it's
really
uncanny.
like I'm really feeling a physical connection to the Kraken folk.
Oh, it's very physical. We're very physical people. Let me tell you, as fish, people will look at you. They say, what's that fish man up to? Or that fish woman? What are they doing on there? But let me tell you, the Kraken folk are proud. And we get immunity to taking extra stats when we look on bravery. Because we're brave folk, the Kraken folk. We've been down, diving deep.
What are you called again? The Kraken what?
Kraken folk. We're the proud Kraken
Oh,
folk.
okay.
My gills fell off. Oh, let me stick them back on. Let me stick my gills. We're underwater, so you can see real far, lassie. You can see far, see the enemies coming. And, like I said, the secrets of the sea are imbued in your soul. When you take our culture, and we get the extra, we strong drinking whiskey that we find in bottles down at the bottom. That's what we dig them up and we drink them. They're still good. They're still good. We have a special straw that we can take. We just we drink right from here, right from the
I
kids.
don't think any of this is in that guide.
It is. It's all in the guide. You have to pay
I'm
$10 to download it. Download it from Arcane Press.
You've gone from Scottish to German now. It's so good.
That's another thing I had to tell about the. Oh, my gills keep falling off, but they won't. Oh
my God.
If you like shocking grasp, we got shocking grasp too. So, if you're ready to take the plunge into the deep, you call me for Kraken folk. Kraken folk.
All right, thank you, Kraken folk.
Oh my gosh.
Remember to
thank
hydrate.
you.
I'm going back in the spa.
Steamy. Wow.
All right, our last contestant, Chris Daly, recommending the Sile Side. Chris found a filter to make himself look like a talking mushroom.
I don't do enough.
It's like a deleted scene from Kung Pao Enter the Fist.
Hey, babe. Let me tell you about psilocybes, babe. So we are fun guys. First of all,
He made it work. It's the worst mushroom joke, but he made it work. Strong open, Chris. Continue.
I mean, also, we might be a little short on the short side, but we know how to chill. In fact, we live in cool environments underground. And let me tell you, the land, it's abundant, baby. We got a lot of it. And we got like all the land you could talk about. We're really cool with nature too. You know what I'm saying? All right. See, like the mushroom people, the psilocybes, the myconoids, some people call us. You can call me whatever you want, baby. Just don't call me late. Listen, we are sentient mushroom creatures. All right. And we're down with talking plants, non-talking plants. In fact, if you're part of our culture, you can talk to plants. You know what I'm saying? All right. Another thing you got to know is that when we're feeling low, we know how to go because we emit hallucinogenic spores. We might only be able to walk 25 feet, but don't let the size deceive you because it's all in the head and the stem too as well. And also our children, because I know we're going to have a bunch, mature very quickly, but we can live up to 50 years. So it's all about longevity, baby.
Yeah, 50 years is a number.
Yeah, but they grow up real quick, so you don't have to worry about any of that surly teenage phase when it comes to psilocybes. It's all about wisdom with the psilocybes. So we got wisdom score by 2, and the constitution, because if you're dishing it out, you got to know how to take it. So our constitution is a 1. So hey, you want to hang with a fun guy? You got to hang with the psilocybe.
You did it again. I like it. Hey!
You made it work twice.
Wow.
So that was quite the visual journey.
Oh my god.
We will post some visuals of
I
that.
feel like you had such a nice podcast planned and then this happened.
You know, it's about embracing diversity and culture and just looking at it from every angle.
Hey, I got to wear a dress.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
So speaking of which, it's that time of night where you have to make some decisions. Unfortunately, it's going to be hard for some people. You know, you can have 2 parents to choose from your ancestry, and you can decide what that future character, what culture. So we had the Earthborn, where you could live in caves with a bunch of grease. We had the Lashan, where you could have antlers and live in the forest. We had the Kraken folk, which was just like all kinds of weird ocean stuff, or you could be or live with mushroom people. So what are you thinking? What do you want to mix and match from this?
I feel like this is so hard. Man. So I feel like I'd like the culture, and really just the gills are kind of what sold me on the Kraken folk. But I liked the ability to communicate with animals of the Lashan.
Yeah.
So I think those 2. Born and psilocybe. I'm sorry, but your time on The Bachelorette has ended.
It's all right. I know a couple roses. I know how it goes.
But Lashan and Kraken folk, will you accept this rose?
Yeah. So let's see. In terms of that,
I'll take that rose.
And now let's have sex
in
in a mansion with cameras
deck.
outside. Did I ruin The Bachelorette?
Bachelorette's your thing. You certainly didn't ruin D&D. It's too pliable.
It's gonna take more than me to ruin D&D.
All right. So that's a little taste of Ancestry and Culture from Arcanist Press. Check it out. D&D, like core rules. I think the next book that's coming out, like the D&D actual, like of the Coast book, addresses Tasha's Cauldron of something. Yeah, they're having. So I don't know what
Tasha's
rules.
Cauldron of everything.
Mm-hmm. So they're actually addressing. They're adding some like rules to race in that. I don't know quite what they're going to do, but like in terms of like if the only thing you want is to like adjust this part of your game, expand this part of your game, like Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro are doing fine. So like, I would prefer to throw my $10 to one of these smaller presses, but that book coming up definitely has a lot of other cool stuff in it. So I might check that out too. But I think it's good to know that the company D&D is kind of like embracing this too and growing and developing, even if they're a little bit behind the curve. So any last thoughts?
Anybody get a screenshot of Jeff's gills and
I did. I
I'm
took a
pretty
couple
sure.
screenshots.
I'm pretty sure I'll have this whole thing recorded. I think I will get a video and audio, so I might be able to just play
Oh boy.
some
I
clips.
took a couple screenshots for Instagram.
noise.
I was gonna say, like, I think it's definitely worth checking out if you are a podcast group or a new group and you just want to be able to be more inclusive or be more diverse. Look into some options to play for your own characters, or if you're a DM and you want to make up some interesting mixes of characters, this gives you some really good options, and I hope we get more stuff like this from small press. And Arcanist Press really did a great job, and it deserves a lot of attention, so definitely check it out.
And I mean, I'll just chime in, like, as again the person who did zero homework or research, and kind of to echo a little bit of what I think Carlos was presenting earlier, like, as somebody who doesn't have that background, and I know we've kind of done some homebrew stuff with like Chris's, character having kind of a mixed ancestry and stuff, like that's a thing that I know for me, like, I like some of the rules and structure. I don't always trust myself to homebrew because I'm scared that things are going to sway in one direction. And so this feels like a cool way to kind of have that roadmap to do that customization and create something that's, I mean, how many times, I'm sure Jeff knows this feeling, but you look at the list of like the classic, starting races, and you're like, not another tiefling. I mean, they're fun, but like, it's cool to be like, oh, like I could do something that, I'm not just playing one archetype or whatever because of the bump or the skill, whatever that comes with it. So I think that's super cool. And, when and if we start rolling any new characters, this is definitely something that I really would love to play with, because it just kind of feels like a whole new world got opened up. And
I think that's a good point, is that we at Knights of the Roll Table, starting with Zach's character, we're going to start using the terms of ancestry and culture as opposed to race, and start, when we do roll new characters, at least keep in mind that these are options that we can have. Yeah. I don't know about if you're going to see any psilocybes anytime soon, but we'll see.
For anyone that's interested, if you go to drivethrurpg.com, you can purchase it, but they also have a full 30 pages that you can preview. And check out for yourself. That'll contain like the entire introduction and part of the stuff that we read today, as well as like a couple of things. The main the sort of main supplement works with the races that are already available through the player's guide. The sort of second part of the podcast where we were pitching Jen on our ancestries and culture is more is from a second supplement called More Ancestry and Culture. But so if you want the very first one contains stuff that's already sort of, it just restructures what you've already might be familiar with from the player's handbook, and then the additional supplement of More Ancestry and Culture is the one that contains like very fun more than 40 different varieties of ancestries and cultures.
Giving you something to think about, something to consider, added to your future role-playing game fun. So take care of yourself, take care of each other, and make life an adventure.
Whoop whoop! And watch The Bachelorette. It's wonderfully terrible.
So
we're not advertising a network show on our podcast.
Can we restart season 4 and all be psilocybins? I want to be a mushroom folk.
Edit it in.